This is Dark Dubai Diaries, stories from the shadows of the city. In a place where glass towers cut the desert sky, truth is reflected, not revealed. Every deal, every promise, every smile at a rooftop bar is stitched together by one quiet rule: say nothing. They call it confidentiality, but in Dubai's boardrooms it has another name: the NDA. At Omni Global, a firm built on innovation and illusion, one signature could buy silence for a lifetime. When Maya Rahim signed hers, she thought it was routine. For months, she rose through mirrored halls, chasing targets and approvals, never seeing the cracks beneath the marble floors. Until the night she found the numbers that did not match, and the silence she had agreed to keep started whispering back. That is where this story begins. Every day at 7:15, the same alarm pulled her out of shallow sleep in a one-bedroom just off the Marina. From her window, the towers shone in the distance, holding other people's names, other people's power. By 8:30, she was in DIFC. Maya was Senior Communications Manager at Omni Global. On paper, she managed corporate narrative, shaped external perception, aligned messaging across regions. In reality, she spent her days turning complex, uncomfortable realities into clean, confident sentences. Omni Global was everywhere. Its logo hung on Sheikh Zayed Road billboards, airport banners, metro screens. The company spoke of smart cities, sustainable infrastructure, digital transformation, legacy. It spoke constantly about building the future. At the center of that story stood Daniel Al-Hadi. He was the kind of CEO who occupied a room before he spoke. On stage, he talked about courage, disruption, value beyond profit, transparency as a core value. The quotes people repeated, the lines investors liked. Many of them started on Maya's screen late at night and tracked change documents. She admired him the way employees are taught to admire leaders who embody the company's myth. Magazines called him visionary. Panels introduced him as bold. Young staff copied his phrases into their notebooks. In her first month, Maya met Lina Costa. Lina had been in Dubai long enough to remember the skyline before the current one. Late 40s, Portuguese, with the calm of someone who had seen too much and the patience to explain it. Her title sat somewhere between communications, strategy, and stakeholder relations. Unofficially, she was the person who understood how things actually worked. Lina became Maya's mentor. She taught Maya everything she needed to know about Omni: who could be trusted, which departments always ran late, which partners were polished outside and corroded underneath. She showed Maya how to write one version of truth for regulators, another for investors, another for the public, each technically accurate, none complete. They met often in a small cafe in Gate Village. Over espresso, Lina would slide a draft back and say a line sounded too direct, then soften it by just enough to keep it safe. Maya signed her first NDA in week 1. HR presented it with the rest of the onboarding forms: standard confidentiality, proprietary data, restrictions on public commentary during and after employment. She understood the bargain: access in exchange for silence. In a city built on contracts and visa stamps, one more signature did not stand out. Her days settled into rhythm: morning media scans, messaging frameworks, calls with agencies in London and Singapore, talking points for panels, sustainability report highlights, internal memos and emails. At night, she rode back along Sheikh Zayed Road, replying to comments on her phone while towers flickered past the taxi window. Work bled into sleep and back again. 2 years in, Omni offered a promotion, a calendar invite, a glass room with a courtyard view, a senior vice president with a practiced smile and a printed letter, head of corporate narrative, more money, more access to Daniel, a step closer to the center. Tucked behind the offer was an expanded NDA. This one was denser. It covered confidential information, internal irregularities, structural arrangements, and any communication with auditors or regulators without prior approval. Words like non-reportable anomalies, internal resolution channels, and material breach appeared in tight legal paragraphs. The vice president called it standard at her level. Sensitive information, higher stakes, nothing to worry about. Later that day, Maya walked Lina through the document in broad terms. Lina wasn't surprised. She said these NDAs were the real price of seniority in certain firms. Titles and raises were the visible reward. The invisible cost was the slow surrender of the right to step back and say, "I saw this." The more signatures, the less daylight between the person and the institution. That night, Maya considered sending the document to a lawyer friend, then reread the clause about unauthorized sharing. She thought about asking HR for clarification, then pictured the look she would get for questioning a standard process. The next morning, she signed. A corporate portrait went up on internal channels with a paragraph about her achievements. Colleagues congratulated her online and in hallways. LinkedIn filled with comments about well-deserved success. From the outside, it looked like another clean upward step. Inside, something small shifted out of reach. The event that changed everything began, like many corporate disasters, with a forwarded email that should not have reached her. It was a Thursday evening. Maya was staying late to polish messaging for a major announcement on the Horizon project, Omni's flagship initiative for transparent, sustainable development. Her inbox pinged. The sender was a finance director. She was not on the distribution list. Autocomplete had pulled the wrong Maya. Policy said she should flag the error and delete the attachment. Her professional instinct, the one that believed you must understand the full picture to communicate it, told her to open it. She clicked the spreadsheet. At first glance, it was a standard big project budget. Consultants, contractors, platforms, contingency. Projected versus actual, adjustments in neat columns. She scrolled. Certain entity names repeated, attached to vague descriptions and rounded figures that didn't match normal invoicing patterns. Some companies she had never seen in any external materials. Anonymous holding company names that belonged in offshore registries, not press releases. One tab was hidden. She unhid it. This sheet mapped flows between subsidiaries, partners, and outside entities, ending in a jurisdiction known mainly for secrecy. At the top of a column marked beneficiary was a full name. Daniel Al-Hadi. She stared at that cell until the room seemed quieter. The attached PDF presented the same story as diagrams. Circles for companies, arrows for money, lines converging at places the public never saw. In investor decks, Horizon was a joint effort between Omni and government stakeholders, funded through regulated channels. Internally, according to this file, part of that funding looped through layers that blurred who ultimately received key payments. She closed the PDF and leaned back. On the wall hung a framed core value, integrity, above a line about transparency being non-negotiable. A line she had written. Now the numbers sat inside her like a confession that wasn't hers but wouldn't leave. This was not a small error, and under her NDAs, even acknowledging what she had seen was dangerous. She marked the email as unread, as if that could undo anything. She thought of replying about the mistake, then imagined the digital trail. The office hummed with air conditioning. Outside, towers reflected each other. Traffic flowed as always. Nothing in the city's surface had changed. Everything in her had. The next day in Gate Village, Maya told Lena what had happened, careful to avoid names and exact figures. Lena listened in silence, her face tightening. She didn't ask for documents. She didn't suggest screenshots. Instead, she asked if Maya was sure it had been an accident, or if someone wanted her to see behind the curtain. Maya said it looked like a simple autocomplete error. Lena remained unconvinced. She reminded her of the NDAs. She pointed at the clauses that treated internal irregularities as information to be contained, not exposed. She said that in some countries, whistleblowing was protected. Here, outcomes often depended on who had more power, more lawyers, more friends in the right rooms. Certain truths, Lena said, came with costs, and those costs rarely landed on the names printed in the largest font. Her advice was simple and brutal. Be cautious. Don't dig. Don't save copies. Don't discuss details over personal channels. Knowledge in this city could be an asset or a liability. Back at Omni, the building looked unchanged. The details did not. Her access card flashed red at an executive door that usually opened. Security called it a systems update. Her HR portal forced a password reset she hadn't requested. An automated email said her access profile had been adjusted. A recurring meeting with legal and finance vanished from her calendar. She later saw it still existed, just without her. On an internal approvals list, her name slid from the top half to near the bottom. Chats that had always included her as default now bypassed her. Elevator conversations paused when she stepped in. Each thing alone was small. Together, they drew an outline. At home, a knot settled between her shoulders. Sleep came in fragments. At 4 a.m., she would find herself staring at the ceiling, the hidden tab from that spreadsheet burning behind her eyes. One evening, she reopened the expanded NDA and read the clause on irregularities. Any sharing of internal anomalies with auditors or regulators without prior written authorization counted as material breach. Grounds for termination, potential legal action, financial damages. Irregularity wasn't defined. The ambiguity was deliberate. She closed the document, aware that even revisiting her own constraints felt like edging toward them. Work went on, campaigns launched, videos dropped with confident music, staff posted from company events about impact and purpose. Maya moved through it all like a ghost that still typed, still approved, but no longer believed the story she was telling. She did not contact regulators. She did not call a journalist. She did what most people do. She tried to live with it. The formal confrontation arrived dressed as a compliment. A calendar invite from Daniel's office. Strategic narrative risk session, executive level. An evening slot. A boardroom on one of the top floors. When the elevator doors opened, the floor was nearly empty. The city glowed beyond the glass. Inside the boardroom, the Omni logo glowed on the wall screen. A jug of water, 2 glasses, 1 folder. Daniel stood by the window. He thanked her for staying late, praised her work, talked about how important her role was in shaping how Omni spoke to the world. Then he shifted. He talked about the realities of leading a large regional firm. Messy regulations, uneven expectations, the need to manage misunderstanding. He said that at her level she would inevitably see structures and decisions that could be misread without context. He did not mention any file. He did not say horizon. He did not have to. The folder in front of her held another NDA, shorter, sharper. This one focused on financial structures, deviations from public disclosures, and any contact with external authorities. One clause was blunt. She would not report, signal, or help report internal irregularities to regulators or auditors without written authorization from the chief executive. No talk of ethics, no talk of right and wrong, just process, loyalty, and consequences. While she read, Daniel spoke in smooth generalities about trust, alignment, responsibility. He reminded her of the access she had. He reminded her of how careers could grow when everyone pulled in the same direction. He didn't threaten her directly. He didn't need to. The threats already existed in what she had signed. The power to end her employment, the fact that her visa depended on it, the legal machinery that could recast her as the problem if she became inconvenient. The message was simple. Stay inside the line and your life continues. Step out and you're on your own. The pen in her hand felt heavy. Refusing would mean betting her future against an institution woven into the city's business fabric. Asking for time or independent advice would mark her as a risk. She thought about her rent, her savings, her career built on this brand name. The difficulty of starting over in a place where references carried more weight than resumes. She signed. Her signature didn't erase what she had seen. It made sure that if she ever chose to speak, the price would be high. Rumors surfaced anyway. First, vague posts on anonymous forums about a big Dubai firm under quiet review for project financing irregularities. Then, small foreign blogs mentioned leaked documents, shell companies, inflated costs, offshore routes. No company name yet. No executives. Inside Omni, the air tightened. Closed meetings multiplied. Emails talked about alignment and cooperation. Legal drafted phrases before anyone knew which questions would be asked. Maya's world narrowed. She was kept out of the core response team. Her tasks shrank to drafting holding statements about commitment to transparency and proactive internal reviews. She wrote lines she knew were partial truths. She adjusted Q&A documents to deflect specifics. A short internal memo announced that Omni would conduct a review of certain project-related financial arrangements. This was presented as self-initiated, a sign of strong internal controls. A week later, another memo said Daniel would step down for personal reasons. It praised his vision. It did not mention spreadsheets. Outside, a brief press note expressed gratitude for his leadership and emphasized continuity. Markets moved on. Inside, staff speculated quietly. Maya's turn came in a small meeting room with HR and legal. They talked about restructuring, strategy shifts, role duplication. They said her position was being dissolved. They offered a severance package tied to yet another agreement. No legal claims, no public statements, no sharing of internal information. Her access card stopped working before she reached the elevator. There was no farewell email. She simply vanished from distribution lists. Weeks later, in a Marina cafe, she opened an article from a major international outlet. It described a regional infrastructure firm routed through shells and offshore channels, questioned inflated project costs, and noted a recent CEO resignation. The name Omni Global appeared in cautious paragraphs. No accusations, just questions. Regulators in different jurisdictions were said to be reviewing information. Her own name did not appear. Her department did not exist in the story. From one angle, that absence was a relief. From another, it was a reminder of how easy it is to be edited out of a story you helped write. Outside the cafe window, boats traced slow paths along the water. At nearby tables, people discussed rent, schools, bonuses, visa renewals. New projects were being pitched. New executives were giving keynotes. New NDAs were being signed. Maya scrolled through job listings on her phone, adjusting the dates for her time at Omni, rehearsing neutral answers for interviewers who would ask why she left a role that looked perfect on paper. She was not a whistleblower. She was not the architect of the scheme. She was something more common, a professional who saw too much, signed too much, and did too little. Because the system was built to make too little feel like the only realistic option. In some drive on a server she no longer had access to, her NDAs sat in their folders, silent contracts binding what she remembered to what she could afford to say. On her CV, Omni Global was a single line with dates. The missing piece, the missent email, the hidden tab, the boardroom document, lived only in her. NDAs do not change what happened. They change who can speak about it and at what cost. They turn people into walking archives of unsaid things, tying memory to mortgage payments, conscience to visa status, ethics to the price of a breach. In a city of glass towers and polished stories, this is one of the currencies that never appears on a balance sheet. This was Dark Dubai Diaries, stories from the shadows of the city.